Hi, my name is Gina Wagers, and this is Module 1. Just a little bit about me. I have 3 kids and a dog. I enjoy doing a few things in my spare time when I do have free time, like running. I like watching true crime shows, reading, and then I'm a huge fan of just cleaning and organizing stuff. Professional demographics, this is my 10th overall year in education. I'm originally from Michigan, so that's where I started my career as a reading intervention teacher. And then I moved here to Kansas. This is my 9th year in USD 475. I started as a reading intervention teacher at the freshman level and then kind of expanded and started working with more high school students. And then I kind of took a turn and started working with middle school population as part of a magnet program that we were developing here. And then I kind of stayed on board with that as we expanded opportunities for high school students looking for an alternative path to graduation. So that is currently where I am in the H.D. Carnes building, which is our school's alternative education setting. Within the building, I have a lot of different titles other than just classroom teacher. I am our SIT coordinator, our instructional coach, and then I also just recently added a summer school site coordinator to that list as well. So thinking about the resources from this module, I'm going to start with the non-academic barriers and activities that were discussed and the role of the building leader in navigating these things. I think first and foremost, the leader needs to conduct a really thorough investigation of what the needs and conditions and resources actually are. I think the quote that stood out the most to me from this particular resource was alone and together. A lot of times I think the more issues that we see a student experiencing outside of school, whether it's homelessness, food insecurity, we think they're going to need more supports, but really the fact that alone each of these individual factors impacts student success is just a really good reminder of that. I think too then it's critical for the leader to understand that their role in this is navigating how to identify and take that information and then bridge that gap and find the partnerships and supports that are going to best benefit students. And I think that's where when you look at the different models of supports, are you adding things on to your current programs, or are you looking at systemic changes to things within your building and really utilizing local resources and those local connections to really drive all of that. Understanding the internal factors that contribute to academic barriers is important, or non-academic barriers. I think a lot of times it's easy to point to all of the things that happen outside of school that impact how students show up for school, but I think we need to remember that the way we show up for students and the things that we put in place within buildings also has an impact on them. And I think teacher training, teacher preparedness to address classroom management and issues as they arise is a really key factor in that. And then again, the role of the administrator in providing that embedded coaching where we're working continuously and self-evaluating and reflecting to work on improving our practices. Prioritizing a responsiveness to systemic inequities when we're talking about the way we show up and the way we address issues, thinking about how we're distributing and allocating funds to certain programs and demographics of students, thinking about our disciplinary policies and whether and really looking at those things through the lens of the students who are traditionally marginalized by those things. We want to make sure that all of the policies and procedures and things that we're putting in place are promoting that diversity and equity, that they're including students, and that really the resources and things that we're choosing to implement and bring into our schools and classrooms are supporting all students. I think it's important for the leader to then utilize data to determine the effectiveness of discipline approaches and safety. This particular resource really focused on those discipline policies and practices that are leading to students being excluded or removed from the classroom. When we talk about barriers, we don't want to be the ones creating the barrier to students accessing materials and resources and curriculum because they're being removed from the classroom when they misbehave or they're being suspended for long periods of time. So we want to look at our frameworks like MTSS. Do we have policies and procedures in place to support students before we get to a level where we're having to remove them from settings of learning? Positive behavior incentives and systems like that are a huge piece of that. And then again, just increasing teacher capacity to handle some of those things is really important. Understanding the holistic utility of extracurriculars. I think this particular resource was really interesting, looking more at not just categorizing and counting how many activities can we get students to participate in, because it opens doorways to them when they're applying to colleges, and it looks good on transcripts or on resumes, but thinking more about the ways that that's fundamentally good for their development at the current place that they're in, not just for something outside of school, because it does give them opportunities to access skills and to have opportunities for leadership that outside of a classroom setting that are good for them. It's important for a leader too to know just the laws and resources that those laws guarantee. When we think about the McKinney-Vento Act and students who are facing homelessness, we can't exclude them from certain activities because of those situations. So understanding that there is a person in your district, or should be a person in your district, who can coordinate those resources for you, but then also knowing that what that means in terms of eligibility of students to participate, because they can get funding for transportation, they can get funding to purchase the clothing items or the sports equipment that they need to participate in some of those things. And then again, just thinking about the usefulness of that for students, not just because it engages them, but because it provides them with that stability and predictability that helps support their overall success. When we think about academic barriers, I think it's important for a leader to know the types of support that can actually boost and promote student academic preparedness. And this resource was a specific study where collegiate level sites had been given a grant, and they had used that money to either improve or develop student support programs that were direct programs where it's looking at individual student needs and providing that, or something more indirect where it's supporting the effort of a more culture climate, where it's more about the overall experience of students and something is being created or implemented or put in place that benefits all. But again, this idea of the holistic student, that these things are beneficial because they promote a lot of the skills that students need to be academically successful as well. I think it's important to identify those major transitions and plan for supports during that time. We think not just transitions from building to building in a district when we go from grade level to grade level, elementary to middle school or middle school to high school, but like within curriculums too. When I think of myself as a reading intervention teacher, I think of those transition points where students are moving from learning how to read to learning learning things from what they're reading, and those are also critical transitions. So understanding those and the resources and materials and things that we have in place to support students as we navigate those different transition points academically is very important. With academics, there's always this idea of this access to technology and whether or not that's beneficial to students or whether it's more detrimental to their academic development. I think the first and foremost most important thing is evaluating those systems of learning, that the management systems that are being used, because we tend to look at that from our point of view as entering grades and checking grades and attendance and things like that. But we need to look at that from the point of view of the stakeholders who have to also engage with those platforms. If it's not easy for them to access, if they don't know where to go to navigate to get that information, it's going to be very hard for them to support and make decisions regarding academics. So it's important to consider that. And then at a more classroom level, when you're thinking about resources and apps and things that are being used digitally during daily instruction, making sure that they are accessible to all students and that they're benefiting the academic experience, that they're bringing something to that for students. And of course, we don't want to just bring in technology for the sake of technology. So I think when we're looking at integration, we need to think about that it's not creating an opportunity gap because some students don't know how to use it or others do, or it provides more of a support to some students that help them access things better than others would, right? We want to think about our decision making and the training that we're also providing to students and staff with technology to make it the most successful resource that it can be. So then thinking about reflecting on all of this information and my current building or district, I started with academic activities that we currently have or have had, and I kind of paired those with things that would need to be more improved in order for them to be more successful, or things that we don't currently have that are needed or would be necessary for my building. We have after-school programs like tutoring, which are usually really successful. One thing that we do need, though, with tutoring, I think, is that would make it more accessible to all students would be transportation. I think that is a barrier that we have that kind of gets in the way of all of our students participating, so that can be kind of a struggle. We do have partnerships with K-State that allow a lot of our staff to gain additional endorsements. We have a good partnership to get student teachers, but I would like our district to kind of focus more on internal professional development that we offer to teachers who have been in our district for a while, to prioritize more capacity building as far as leadership and building confidence in people to be able to move into those roles within their buildings. We do have MTSS and SIT as structures to support academic success in our buildings. We've really been revamping that since COVID, but I would really like us to see us really develop more collaborative partnerships and infrastructures for the placement processes that we use for putting students in the alternative building here, just so that those plans are a little bit more established as far as the alternative routes for students to be successful academically. We do have summer school and transition programs, but I would like to see us really develop some kind of peer tutoring or supports where students are working with each other more throughout the school year, and having opportunities to interact with more diverse groups of students. I think that would be really beneficial. We do have staff PD that focuses on technology integration with academics, but I think we need more training and support with our families and students on our learning management systems. We have things like National Honor Society, music and arts electives. We have parent-teacher conferences, but I would really like us to see us develop that more into individualized learning plan conversations and incorporate more of that. We don't really have a lot of electives at the alternative level, so I would like to see that build our academic success and capacity in students here. We have an SEL curriculum, but I would like to see us integrate that more into our core and content settings so that there's application time for the things the students are learning outside of that. And then we have advisory built into our daily schedule, but we are in need of a financial literacy curriculum. Non-academic activities, communities and schools, McKinney-Vento coordinator who works out of our alternative building. We have positive behavior incentives and rewards system built into that. We have JAG-K as an elective, which has a lot of service learning opportunities. We have parent and caregiver programs and educational nights where they're taught love and logic, which is great developmentally for them to understand their children a little bit better. We have student government, sports and clubs. We have community involvement and requirements for graduation that involve volunteering. We also have diversity activities and assemblies, and we have digital access and one-to-one computers and hotspots. We need, and we had a partnership with K-State where we had a program called WOW, Working on What Works, that focused more on ACEs and getting students to connect more and build relationships within the classroom. I'd like to see us bring that back. I think we need more family engagement opportunities that are non-academic within our year. I'd like to see us have some kind of mentoring program or S2S program. We don't have any clubs or extracurriculars at the alternative building currently. I'd like to see us develop more community partnerships that focus more on CTE, pathways, and career exploration, and then just stakeholder family engagement, diversity activities, and assemblies. The research here from this module increased my knowledge of leadership and the role that it plays in connecting stakeholders to school curriculum, and also maximizing the impact of student curriculum by leveraging the right resources for students and support staff. I've also gained a better understanding of how a building leader must work to navigate those gaps to improve the overall school and decision making. And this assignment is really relevant to my current learning because it allowed me to reflect on my current building to consider the differences between a technology heavy curriculum and a technology rich learning environment. Personally, after I accept my first administration position, I would probably utilize the steps that I kind of outlined and made out of the resources here, with conducting that needs assessment, following up with figuring out how we're progressing toward building goals, evaluating that information, and conducting an infrastructure and technology assessment, figuring out that overall balance as far as programs that are addressing the needs of individual students versus whole students so that we can really develop that. And then just as the administrator, I need to reflect on my role then in those needs and leveraging support from the right stakeholders in order to implement programs and supports for staff, students, and families. And then I have